Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to this Friday special emergency cup of coffee, emergency geopolitical discussion. It is Friday, April 17th. I'm about to clean my room off some temple here because it does need some cleaning. So we're going to rock and roll with that. Put cups of coffee here on the side and gotta commence with gratitude, grateful, thankful. My rent's paid my rent, paid my electricity bill, paid my Netflix, paid, of course. I got to pay my rent first and foremost. That's always what I do: pay rent, pay electricity bill thereafter, and paid Netflix, paid my internet connection. So those are paid until next week. I have a bit of a deadline to pay. I have to pay my phone, not the phone itself, the hardware, but of course, the plan, the phone plan. So that's on the on my budget. It's the next to do list in terms of financial expenses and budget, and that's gonna be taken care of because I had put the money before contingency to just pay my phone bill, so that's not going to be a problem. It's just that I have to go to pay it directly because I do not have it's not linked with my bank account, just like my hydroelectric, the electricity bill is. So here we are, and now this morning, of course, I gotta salute the firefighters, the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, the doctors, the plumbers, the electricians, the welders, the construction workers, the daycare workers changing diapers. Always rock and roll for them, as you know that it's always geopolitics, rock and roll, sports and fitness. Dancing is my favorite sport, and yours truly here, Adrian Hanna Dragon, androgynous, pansexual, Aspie artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical analyst, scientist. I'm gonna go a little bit of a emergency geopolitical half an hour. We'll see where we're gonna go. Maximum an hour. I don't want to do too much because I have a few hours to change my room off some tempo, sweep the floors, and clean the floors, and sweep the floors, and clean the bathroom, and sweep the floors of the kitchen. And I got some Friday is the day that I do cleaning at home. Basically, I do cleaning at home. So as I've seen in the news that there's a fuel shortage, jet fuel shortage, possibly on the horizon. So the possibility of a jet fuel shortage is linked, of course, to this problems in the Strait of Hormuz and generally with the Iran war, the Israel United States led military intervention in Iran, which is the newest one, the newest conflict on the horizon, which now there's some good news, I gotta say, vis-a-vis this conflict, which is linked with the Lebanon conflict or the Hezbollah conflict within Israel and Hezbollah. And of course, there's a news this last came in last night, yesterday. That was a 10-day truce, not really a truce, and a ceasefire slash truce, right? It's like a ceasefire slash in parentheses truce. So a 10-day ceasefire is more precise and accurate, although some labels can be just ceasefire, but not necessarily a truce in the sense that it's a long-term truce because it's 10-day ceasefire. So we'll see where that goes. I guess there's a little bit of hope that during this 10-day ceasefire there will be some more negotiation, although there seems to be a big impasse in relation to the requirements by the state of Israel and its leadership under Benjamin Netanyahu. So as you know that myself here from North America, from Quebec, La Belle Province, Quebec. I'm a Quebecer, North American, and always I put in my rock and roll for the 10, the 50, and the 3, meaning that I always include as if Canada, United States were one imperial republican complex as part of my public-private partnership as a mass public-private partnership concordium, coast to coast, ocean to ocean between Canada and the United States is fundamentally what my dream is all about. The Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, which includes implementing my Trinity of theories, the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, the DRT, Debt Fusion Theory, and the DFT, the Democratic Fusion Theory, which I'm going to perhaps address while I'll discuss the current geopolitical events. I'm just going to hydrate a little bit. To the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the public workers, we got to balance the public and the private. And it's interesting that mentioning the public workers, I got to salute those who pick up the garbage, the compost, and the recycling, and of course also the compost. It's not that strong because I added some water, but it's okay-ish. It's okay. I guess it's gonna be complemented by the other cup of coffee I'm gonna have throughout the day, probably 3 cups of coffee. So yesterday, it's interesting that here in Montreal, the compost service did not pass, but sometimes they pass today. So if it by the time that I'm going to the mountain later this afternoon, if it hasn't passed, I will have to put it to bring it back because I don't want to leave it out. But yeah, I worked on the compost myself in between 2018 and 2019. That was a good experience. So I have some knowledge about the environment and of course the the composting. And since then, of course, my project for many many years has been the call for the creation of the dancing goddess army, the DGA, as I am of course the priestess or the goddess, got those credited, those trillions of kisses got credited on the table, but it's the DGA, which is part of my dream, complementary in a covenant cooperative manner with the Dragon Army, the two complementary covenant cooperative institutions, the Dragon Army with the DGA Dancing Goddess Army, and of course the Dragon Army, the Imperial Integrated Security Service and Defense Complex with for the environmental education and action, the Dancing Goddess Army, which must be established and incorporated. So that's part of the dream. That's part of course, the dream, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, which is the fundamental mass public-private partnership for the North American Collective. But it's interesting that yesterday they didn't pass, and it's not related to the strike. There's a public workers strike, a blue-collar strike here in Montreal, but it didn't necessarily affect the public transit. It affected certain services. But there's tough economic times, right? Even now with the price of gas going up, it's adding a little bit of pressure. And interestingly enough, that yesterday morning gas was around 188.9 at the gas station that the closest gas station to my headquarters, my underground Dragon's Lair. Yesterday morning when I left, around 9:15 in the morning, it was about the price of gas was $1.88.9. When I came back late in the afternoon, at around 6, because I went far away yesterday in Montreal. I had an appointment. I had an appointment. So, and then I came back marching on foot. You see part of the long video, but marched more than 5 hours, 5 hours and a half yesterday of marching. More than any general of NATO yesterday marched that good on that. It was raining, so it was sore when I got back home. But anyways, the price of gas was 194.9. So it went up in those hours during the same thing, 6 cents again. So it's up and down and up and down and up and down, but it's still more than 44 cents higher than when it was end of February, early March. So it's considerable amount, and I'm assuming that by Monday it's gonna be more than $2 by Monday, or next week. That is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It will reach $2 plus, more than $2 again. Because last week we had at one point it was more than $2. It was $2.02, 1.9, 2 cents basically. $2.01, 0.9 cents is rounded up to $2.02, right? So of course I have to go back in time to 2019 when I predicted what's happening now. Generally, of course, in a general manner, as you can check my videos and read my transcripts, read them like Rock&Roll scripture, that I have predicted what's happening now in a general manner, right? In an overall manner, I predicted what's happening now, and of course, I credit much of my work in geopolitics, paradoxically, to, in parentheses, the curse of Asperger's, because I am on the spectrum of autism, right? I am on the spectrum of autism. I have SD level 1, autism spectrum disorder level 1, HFA level 1. So it has been certainly a road of dark gray, black mountains, I guess, thunderous storms throughout accepting my Asperger's, my neurodivergence, of course. And there has been quite something which I have to always discuss and mention, because it took me years and years to finally accept my Asperger's and neurological mental divergent condition, which is not a mental illness. I am high functioning. I'm a high functioning one, although I still have ways and places to improve in the social sphere, social understanding the dynamics of the neurotypical, of you, my brothers and sisters who are neurotypical. Not only my neurodivergent community and Aspies are my brothers and sisters, because I don't have antagonistic, resentful feelings towards the neurotypical population, none whatsoever. However, I am different, and I always will be different in the way that my brain is. Our brains of myself as part of the Aspie community is basically fundamentally there's sort of mutations at the micro level. It's not protrudent outside of the exterior of the brain, and it's not visibly as such. Although in interaction with an Aspie, somebody who has an Asperger's, a neurotypical, the neurotypical is 99%, will probably pick up and detect massively and right quite within a few minutes, even or hours, within an interview of an hour, 2 hours, or several interactions in a time span of, it could be a few days or a few weeks, right? You will see that an Aspie, if you interact with an Aspie, we are different, unless there's a tremendous effort of masking. Of course, that is not something that should be done by Aspies. It's masking can masking autism traits and characteristics can be impact the mental health of an Aspie and quality of life, and can uh, cause tremendous bodily physically harm. So that is where we are as an Aspie today, as having accepted. I gotta thank my anonymous friend who deserves the best. If I make a billion, I wish I could buy her a house. Wish I could buy her a house. If I make a billion, I'm gonna give her half. A billion has 10 zeros, right? That's a billion has 10 zeros. It's not 100 million; it's 1,000 million. But anyways, meaning that I would not just verbally thank and be grateful, but by action, because most of my gratitude and compassion and empathy and compassion and gratitude is also more action based, right? So I recommend Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome as a book, and also this book here, which is interesting. It's not on a more practical level, although the first book that I recommend the most is Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. This one, teaching Asperger's students social skills through acting all their world as a stage, is like a paragraph of a title, right? But teaching Asperger's students social skills through acting all their world as a stage, teaching Asperger's students social skills through acting all their world as a stage is a book that I strongly recommend for anybody who wants to. Well, if you're an Aspie, you will have, for some Aspies more than others, of course, we're individual, you'll find practical information and practical ways to be able to build bridges, whether small, medium, large, or extra large, with the neurotypical population, right? Which you are the 99% compared to us, the 1%. So we have special interests, right? And that's why I say, because of the curse, because of the suffering, struggle, being depressed and suicidal, and losing friends, losing jobs, losing friends, losing jobs, losing friends, losing jobs. We have Aspies. Usually we make friends, but we tend to lose them because we're different, and it requires patience. It requires lots of patience and understanding an Aspie to understand that the Aspie brain is fundamentally different, and certain things we will have trouble with, especially social knowledge and social skills, and things not to do in public or not to say, because the not having a filter is also something that's it's part of being an Aspie, right? And it's not, sometimes we don't mean to offend or be offensive or rude or whatever, if intentionally, willingly, is because our brain functions fundamentally different. So even the concept of having a social filter can be alien for an Aspie, right? It can be, yeah, it can be alien. It can be foreign, alien for an Aspie, right? And it's something that sometimes it takes practice, and effort to understand, and to know that you can lose jobs because of it. You can lose friends. You can isolation, which I have lived, isolation and losing friends. But I'm in the past years, I'm pretty joyous, pretty happy. I have to mention, because I mentioned it that a few weeks ago, actually 2 weeks ago, there was a discussion about how 2/3 of Canadians. There was a survey conducted. More than 2/3 of Canadians, which is the vast majority percentage, right? It's like 66, more than 66%. Those born between 1947 and 1996, basically millennials and boomers, and of course Gen X, basically Gen X, boomers, millennials, were nostalgic about past days of Canada, because they vast majority views that Canada today is way worse, considerably worse than it was before Justin Trudeau got elected October 2015. Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister October 2015, 11 years ago. And so it's interesting, because they said social culturally, so socially, part culturally, and the cultural aspect, I guess, less, but the financial, economic, trade way, the economy, economically, financially, the unaffordability crises, the cost of living crises, the people not being able to afford the living standards as they did before. So it's it's politically and even geopolitically worrisome that a vast majority have this nostalgia about an era, the Harper era, 2005, 2015, right, which lasted about a decade, if you want to call it the Harper era. Stephen Harper was the Prime Minister of Canada. Before, the 90s, the 80s, the 90s, the up to Trudeau, basically those decades. They're nostalgic about those decades, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, right, basically. before Trudeau. So let's say those 30 years there, let's say 1984 maybe till 2015, and they viewed that Canada was way considerably better economically, especially financially, right? Because of now that we have the problems with the trade war, and statistically, they were discussing the statistics how across Canada food bank usage has more than doubled since 2019 in 7 years. Not 20, 30, 40, 45, but in 7 years. It's a considerable increase. Myself, of course, I also have to salute those who do their work for food security, because food security is super important. I'm also grateful for those citizens, known and unknown, and the cooks and the truckers and the bakers and those who donate in the fridge there, because I take more than I put. I take more than I put nowadays, and I'm grateful for the food security because it's alleviating my financial stress, which is my only stress now, really, that I have financial stress, and I don't want to waste nobody's time. If you're 18 or plus, I'm not looking for consolation. I'm not looking for consolation, anything like that. I'm looking for, if you're 18 plus, if you're black or white or man or woman or trans, I'm friends with benefits, friends with benefits, or what I call 21st century friends with services best. So that is on that personal note. So I attribute my expertise, knowledge in geopolitics, and much of my work to having Asperger's, to having autism, to living with the neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's autism. So the correlation of this autism and this Asperger's is the same as HFA, high functioning autism. So we Aspies have special interests, right? So those special interests, sometimes I can spend myself hours and hours and hours involved, super focused, super dedicated, super concentrated, unilinear, in a singular manner, right? And sometimes it's hard to switch tasks. Sometimes I notice that, oh, I'm gonna be delaying my departure date. I have to be try to be punctual to be on time. I'm gonna have to try to be punctual to be on time. I'm gonna make an effort, right? And so it can be really hard to switch tasks as well, and other things can be neglected due to these special interests. Right, myself, it's geopolitics, rock and roll, sports and fitness, and go Habs go. But I would actually buy tickets for the PVHL, Professional Women's Hockey League, the Victoire, if I would afford, because the Habs players of the Canadian Montreal Canadiens are making enough money, and I would financially support the Victoire in this case. But I would cheer for both, as I do cheer for both, and the women rock. The women's hockey, they really rock and roll. It's just that their financial compensation for the games, for their salaries, are just mathematically percentage, because I do constant mathematics. Yeah, and many Aspies like myself were above average in mathematics. We are above average in mathematics generally. I'm no Claude Shannon, but there's always mathematics, percentages, ratios, conversions of ratios, percentages in mathematics, and so that is that is something which I do constantly. But I'm no Claude Shannon. And anyways, so for me, my best day is today. It's always my best day is today. 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 You know, my best day is today. My best day is today. Because as I was listening again, and this is relevant for geopolitics, and again, because geopolitics is one of my special interests. Usually there's one or two or three super focus for me for years and years and years. It has been a constant is geopolitics, and I am an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and philosopher, and an artist and athlete, independent athlete as well. Dancing is my favorite sport. I can dance for hours, and that's that rock and roll for the DGA, Dancing Goddess Army, which I will to create and with your support as a mass public-private partnership. But of course, in parallel to the other dynamics is also rock and roll, as I sing for the workers, the NACWP, North American Collective Workers Party, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the truckers, the electricians, the welders, the firefighters, the plumbers, all those involved in the production and the distribution of food. And the distribution of food, and the cooks and the nurses and the daycare workers, the nurses, the doctors, all those teachers and at all levels, but mostly high school, and elementary and high school, the teachers as well, teaching some math, teaching some geography, So all that the rock and roll that's happening now, and I'm gonna leave it with a mathematical question. All the trucks that are now will always think when I'm gonna have to define the parameter. I'm gonna have to define the parameter. Canada, United States, the 63, Canada, United States, coast to coast, ocean to ocean is an integral social political dynamic unit fused together, which is part of my dream, of course, and my initiatives, protocols thereof, such as the new 911 Dragon Toll security service and defense protocols, which sometimes they can be intellectual, academic in nature, but nonetheless, that reverberation is, of course, a question which is I'm going to leave open for a mathematical question. If they are 10,000 trucks on that carry goods across the empire, well, the Imperial Republic, as Canada and United States fused into one. So Canada has 10 provinces, 3 territories, consider like 13 states plus 50, that would be 63. That's why I always say always for the 63, because I was also born in past lives. I'm a mystic. I believe in reincarnations. And sometimes I was born in the USA. So if there are 10,000 trucks now, or at this point in time, let's say the mathematical question, if there are 10,000 trucks carrying goods across the empire, and 44 of those trucks are carrying bananas, Thank you, my anonymous friend, for this banana. She gifted me this yesterday, so increasing my food security. Thank you, anonymous friend. If I make $1 billion, I'm gonna give her $500,000. Increasing that banana, at the table, it's always the goddess and the god and bananas. If 44 trucks carry banana, what is the percentage of trucks carrying bananas? What is the percentage of trucks carrying bananas? So that is the mathematical question. Each video I'm going to pose a mathematical question. It's for fun. Of course, it can vary because there's always mathematics going on, but there's this, even now, if we meditate a bit about mathematics in terms of the trucks and the carrying of goods, because thank you, truckers, right? They're carrying so many goods, and now with the price of gas, there's problems because a lot of the trucking industry has been problems. And of course, I have been concocting and developing a total North American total security, total service defense. Part of my ongoing initiatives and protocols and dream is, of course, to mass finance the building of electric trucks. We got a mass finance solar and hydro here, Quebec. In Hydro Quebec, we got the electricity, which is clean, zero pollution, zero emission, pollution, and energy and electricity. And even this electricity that I'm using now comes from Hydro Quebec, which is clean, zero pollution, zero emission, which does not pollute. We got 63, interestingly enough, providentially, and we got 63 generating power stations, which contribute to our energy security, and not just Quebec, La Belle Province is here in Quebec, Montreal, but all the way to the United States, several states in the U.S., more northeast mostly, and all the way to New York, Manhattan Island, 1/5, 20% of the island of Manhattan, New York. The electricity in people's homes, in businesses, in restaurants, and whatever the case may be, comes from Hydro Quebec. So cheer up. We got 63 generating power stations and hundreds of dams which provide that electricity, which is clean, zero pollution. It does not pollute. Isn't that amazing? Environmentally friendly here. They can't tell us nothing, eh? They can't tell us nothing. With the electricity production in Quebec is is environmentally friendly. 100%, 100%, 100%. So that is the reality of Hydro Quebec, and we got to build some more dams. So I rock and roll for building more dams. So because my special interests, one of it is geopolitics. For years and years and years, I spend hours a day analyzing geopolitical events, because every hour, geopolitics, just like money never sleeps, just like the sun never sleeps, the sun always rises, always sets, the sun always rises, always sets, and of course always rising, always setting, of course every minute, every hour. there's a sunrise and a sunset. So every hour there's a development somewhere in terms of geopolitics, as we have hundreds of nations, so many organizations and institutions, and of course, such as NATO, as we are part of course, NORAD as well. This is a more defensive military base institutions, but of course, they have their reverberations, or they have their parallel co-equilibrium and parallel co-geopolitical equilibration, which I call the parallel co. This is a theory which is a more academic scholarly theory. The parallel co-equilibration geopolitical, the parallel geopolitical co-equilibration. So meaning that some institutions that are financial economic between nation states, although they're only strictly diplomatic, trade and economic, they can have military defense effects in vis-a-vis other conflicts. I'm not going to go into the dynamic, but this is, of course, I develop strategies, theories, and analytical procedures of geopolitics, right? So if you can sit up and discuss at the table is going to only geopolitics, we're going to go on and on and on for hours. And some of my theories, protocols, or initiatives or analysis might seem intellectual, way too intellectual for some, or way too academic and scholarly for some, because I spent years and years and years dedicated to this subject. It is my special interest, right? So you have to concord that in a parallel way. There's always things that I will have to learn, right? If you're going to ask me the exact population of Tanzania, I might be off by a few million people, but I might be able to. Perhaps Tanzania has about 66 million people. 66 million people. And that I would know that Tanzania, I'm just saying a country like that, has, of course, maybe borders with Rwanda and Mozambique and Kenya, right? In the area, in the area of those countries, and situated in more western central part of Africa, right? But I would probably know that the capital, let's say, is Dar es Salaam, Dar es Salaam. But I would not know all the hundreds and hundreds of cities by heart that are in Tanzania. I might know some, right? Or other countries. It could be other countries. It could be Argentina. I might know that Argentina has Buenos Aires. The population, right, is in the 30 million, 35 million. And of course, it's Buenos Aires. I would know that it has a certain amount of kilometers width and length. I would know, of course, their a little bit of their political structure, but detail. All the cities in Argentina. I will not be able maybe to tell all the cities in Argentina. Maybe I'll be able to tell some. But the general structure of the nation states and their interactions within regional organizations, geopolitical organizations, major conflicts, smaller conflicts, past conflicts, the Cold War. I specialize in the Cold War period, of course, which lasted almost 45 years, and of course, present day. And of course, I always go parallel post 2019, October 2019, because I have proof, what I'm going to say next, that I predicted what's happening now in a general manner. I predicted that there was going to be an international conflagration. And I even created the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, which for years and years and years, I have been advocating for its incorporation across all nation states of NATO. As of course, in the high schools, as young as 7 years of age, it could be done. It's great for the mind, the body, and the spirit. I've performed more than 372 sessions myself. 372 sessions. I created okay, so the perfect, for some it's going to be a perfection, for others not so perfect, or not adequate, or not compatible for certain individuals. But the workout which I created does not require an equipment, and it is meant not to necessarily build aesthetics, to have abs or aesthetically, but to increase general overall fitness in a state of war, in a state of scarcity, in a state of economic crisis, such as we're living now. So it's called the General War Integrated Total Body Training System. I've been advocating for the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, to put it in place at Regina, in the FBI as well. And we have to fuse the RCMP and the FBI as a geopolitical strategy, the North American Collective, and our common manifest destiny. Here, in Quebec, we made the Great Linguistic Compromise, which is a beautiful compromise which we made, and we still have to make an effort as individuals and the collective as a public-private partnership. Just like for the environment, it requires individual action, co-parallel with other actions which are not necessarily backed by the individual, but by the corporate, public-private partnership and corporate structures. But nonetheless, the relationship that we are discussing now of this workout which I created was in the context of my prediction, right? So I have videos where you can see day 1 and day 44, day 93, day 300, day 244 of the general war integrated total body training system, whence of course the incorporation of my workout training program system has to be done and concluded. And we have to develop applications as a mass public-private partnership to finance citizens to work out, train, and exercise, and create the universal exchange unit, the UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE, create the UE and base the counterposition to all the information technology availabilities of the masked IT structures, IT corporate relations and public-private partnership, which is my dream to be. That's why I need my brother Scorpio Bill Gates, and of course Flag Safety, Palantir, and the CIA, CSIS, FBI, the government of Canada, United States government, the United States, Canada, all the corporations and institutions, Canadian and American, as a joint fused geopolitical strategies which we're going to implement. So I predicted what's happening now in 2019. I have proof. So most of my real time is myself post that and having survived COVID. I can't believe it's been 6 years. I do say that it's 4 years. I'm willing to say 4 years, but it's just the reality is that it's been six years in 2020, right in this room of Sun Temple. Thank you, my friend. Again, I remember she was making me hot teas with honey and compresses and helping me throughout. I thought I was gonna die here, 2020, and I didn't die. I survived. I survived being depressed and suicidal. That's why I say for me, my best day is today. I'm gonna clean here today. I'm gonna have a banana. I'm gonna have some when I get back from my workout, because I go to the mountain or to the river, and usually to the mountain on my second home. I march and meditate and do mathematics. I do mathematics. I meditate and I march to the mountain and have a big chocolate bar when I come back. So yeah, I'm pretty joyous, pretty content, happy on a daily basis. I'm just financially stressed, to be honest. Financially stressed. But besides that, I'm good. And I will always be different because of my Asperger's, and that's the autism, of course. The Asperger's, well, I have to correlate, and of course, in the dynamics, well, we got to correlate in the dynamical representation of being neurodivergent, and of course, that structure and that relationship, of course, to be in a structural manner where we have now to relate ourselves, of course, myself for those trillions of kisses created. That is what we have to address, and we have to co-balance in the representational facilities and the facilitation of the North American civilizational structure. That, of course, based on my prediction from of 2019, it is as I have predicted it back then in 2019 in October. So again, I have proof for that as I raise the cup for our new Prime Minister, Christine Fréchette. Christine Fréchette, eh? She's our new Prime Minister in Quebec. She got sworn in Wednesday. Christine Fréchette, after almost 8 years of Uncle Trudeau. Correction, Uncle Legault. Trudeau left last year. Uncle Legault was the Prime Minister of Quebec. It's almost 8 years, so it's a tough position now in these tough times, of course. But I listened to the speech. I analyzed it. I supported some of it. Some of it I found it really interesting. I would have just liked the reality of our common manifest destiny to be with the United States to be expressed even more so, to be expressed even more with a fully paragraph for my fellow Quebecers to fully understand that our common manifest destiny principally is with the United States, not with other geopolitical locations or geopolitical regions, X, Y, Z, or A, B, C, D, right? Primarily with the United States, since more than 3/4, 75% of our goods are exported to the United States. So we got to integral, although I'm no supporter of Granddaddy Trump. Granddaddy Trump, I've been challenging to a boxing match since 2018. I have those red gloves, auctioning them for a billion. And of course, I would have voted for Kamala Biden, but we're not enemies. We're not enemies. And the paradox of Granddaddy Trump making a proposal to Canada, which, as I say, in concordance, parallelly to saying to my fellow Canadians that the king is absent, and that I don't want any other prime minister to swear allegiance as Carney did, as all our prime ministers since 1867, John A. Macdonald, swearing allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. Eh? Uncle Carney last year when he took office swore allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. Think about that. In the 21st century, a Prime Minister of Canada swears allegiance not to the Constitution and the people of Canada, but to the King and his heirs. That gotta go. That should have been done with in the 1st of January 2000, 26 years ago, the turn of the millennium, the 21st century. That gotta go. That has no place in the 21st century. The King of England and his heirs, Anyways, so I'm not gonna go into the geopolitical discussion of hereditary monarchs and hereditary monarchy and its history because I know it. I know it well enough, and it's not the case. Just the king is absent, and my ideas, theories, protocols best, such as the DRT in these tough economic geopolitical times. The world order, as we know it, has changed dramatically in the past years, and now with all the conflicts and the wars happening around the world, we have to commit to what it is today in coast to coast, ocean to ocean, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and of course, my prediction from 2019 is that there will be a World War III, basically, fundamentally, or an international conflagration, an international conflict, such as we're seeing today, a World War III. We see that now the problem would be maybe even jet fuel. I haven't traveled for, I haven't even left the island in 7 years, eh? I'm not going to say stuck because this is my home. Hawk Island, Island of the Hawk, so I have no problem here. This is my home in the mountain. This is my home, the whole island. But that is just something which we have to concord, of course, and being in the concordat of where we are now to co-evaluate all the situational structures and all the co-parallels and the programs and the protocols and the initiatives which we must implement across North America, which are my CIT, Citizen Integration Treaty, the DRT, Debt Refusion Treaty, and the DFT, for the creation of the two complementary cooperative government institutions, PPP, public-private partnership institutions, as solutions. Right, so going back to the discussion of the survey, which fellow citizens, fellow Canadians had conducted, that many Canadians of those born between 1947 and 1996 have a nostalgia about the past. They see the past as better, especially economically, commercially, financially for Canada. Myself, I don't have that. When I go back in the past, times were way worse. Times were bad. I was depressed. I was suicidal. I was losing friends. I was losing friends. I was depressed. I lived in a moldy place, small, moldy underground place with no. I didn't even have a bathtub. I'm grateful I have a bathtub now. Maybe I'll take a bath before I head to the mountain, or tomorrow, otherwise during the weekend, because that could substitute for a massage therapy session. That's what I've been craving, a massage therapy session. You can check my videos. Hey, this being thing, entity, Aspie, androgynous pansexual Aspie artist, athlete, philosopher, Adrian Hannah Dragon, died during COVID, died before, and changed my name. Keep it out of your mouth if it's not for a blessing. And that's what we got, of course, as we go to the mountain, and that's why we rock and roll. And I'm not perfect, far from it, but I have a little bit of that rock and rolling in my heart and in my body, and of course, not perfect very much with my weird, awkward, strange beep, sometimes gestures, because our Aspies, we can be very weird, such as, for example, when I'm in the store, I still inspect objects and things close to the face, look at them, turn them around, and look for those weird social. This is an Aspie trait. I'm going to show you something that some Aspies and people on the spectrum would do. So I would inspect the object very close to the face. So I recommend keeping the protocols of COVID, by the way. So what I do myself as an Aspie. I remember about 2015, 2016, when I was doing that. I was doing like inspecting the objects close to the face in perimeter, very 2-3 inches of the face, and looking at it attentively with attention, and of course trying to see and pinpoint to the certain details, and reading and doing mathematics, calculating the ratios, the percentages of whatever it is. It could be coffee, it could be for coffee, for chocolate bars, for coffee, or for whatever the case may be. It could be in the relationship, of course, of different products, which I would attend to in any point given in time when I go to the markets or to the stores, to the superstores or to the grocery stores. And you can see here, for example, that there's the small number there. See, there's a small number in letters 9650. Then there's a line, there's 644, there's CMCM, and then there's an F. And here above, there's another small number, NPN. 80047004800470004. See 800470004, and there's NPN. So NPN could be number, product number, something NPN. Those are acronyms. So that stands for something, and of course, that is those details which some Aspie sometimes focus on. With it could be weird, it could be strange, eh? But that's just to show a concrete example of Asperger's. So as I go back, I say because of the curse of Asperger's that I excel at geopolitics, and that I was able to predict before it happened what's been happening now in many ways, thanks to this curse, I guess, which has turned into a blessing in a ways, not just for myself but for others, because my solutions are best. So that's why I when I discuss sometimes fully my ideas and theories, or the geopolitics, general geopolitics, or particular specific geo-regional geopolitics, or per, particular unique geopolitical events. Sometimes it could be academic, intellectual, but of course they have a practical meaning for what's been happening today, because some events, such as the motive, the reason why I predicted in 2019, October 2019, that there was going to be an international conflagration, much of it, a portion of it, a percentage of it, one of the main important reasons, motives, was that there was unresolved conflicts from the Cold War period, from the 20th century. If you look at Russia Ukraine is a conflict which was not fully resolved, right? They haven't resolved their conflicts. And during the Cold War, Russia and Ukraine and Russia were all part of the USSR, the Union of Socialist Soviet Republics. And of course, another conflict is Israel Hamas. Hamas was founded in 1984, 87. Yasmin Asid Ahmed Yassin, it was the founder, and they only took power of Gaza 20 years later after their foundation. And Iranian current regime was founded by the Ayatollah 11th of February 1979, 11th of February 1979. So those correlations, of that reality, of course, of these Cold War era conflicts, I predicted that they will reemerge, reignite in the context of the 21st century, right? Decades and decades after the Cold War established a new world order, basically the United States hegemony, which is now no longer so, because now the world is more not hegemon and unipolar, but of course China has emerged as a superpower. So, some might not admit it, but China is a superpower today. China is of the today of 2026 is not the China of the 1980s or 1990s. Eh? China today is a superpower. They have the biggest bridges, biggest ports, biggest airports, and they were able to build mega cities. Some of them are cyberpunk-like cities. It's from what I could see, because I never been right in the some of the, such as Chongqing City, and Shanghai and Beijing, and these mass urban structures, urban collectives, urban metropolises which they built are quite interesting. And perhaps many of us, China is a civilization which we do not fully understand their evolution and their, I would say, even paradoxical, in many ways, paradoxical adoption of Marxism, Leninism, Karl Marx, right? Karl Marx, and establishing in 1978, 79, socialism with Chinese characteristics, which has been the de facto philosophy, social, cultural, political ideology, political philosophy of China since 1978, right? Jumping socialism with Chinese characteristics, so it's called, and what they will to build and attain their. Interestingly enough, it translates as socialist spiritual civilization, socialist spiritual civilization. Now, again, the word spiritual translated, we might not relate the same, because when I say spiritual, I say God, Goddess, and rock and roll. That's my spirituality, and a little bit of sunshine. Don't mind some thunder, lightning with that, but some rock and roll. How I relate to the world, being spiritual and mystic myself, other practitioners, whether civilizations, whether individuals, it varies, right? The understanding and the application on the daily ritual basis. And myself with Asperger's, I have my ritual routines. I have a ritual routines. I pretty much, it's perhaps for neurotypicals, it would be considered a discipline. Discipline, my marches every day, workout every day, and go to the mountain pretty much regularly at my second home, and on foot, marching, and meditating and singing some rock and roll, and always revising geopolitical events and in concordance to the daily events. So for me, my best day is today, and now the discussion, of course, it revolves because there's a possibility of a food crisis. So I guess I'm introducing the necessity for food security across the North American collective in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead, because we might see a increasing food prices. Food prices might increase, and they already have increased, but now because of the fertilizer, right? The fertilizer is a necessity for the farms, and even there has been in the past week a news outlets and news reports about the problem that many farmers have started to face in the US. Now, of course, the USA receives much of the fertilizer potash from Canada, right, from pretty much Saskatchewan and the prairies, the potash and fertilizer, I think 80%. But other countries are dependent on the Strait of Hormuz, which is blockaded and was closed, and it's quite a lot of oil and a lot of fertilizer. So both oil and fertilizer, as it has been described as the worst oil crisis in history. Now myself, I don't drive, and if I would drive, I would get a Cybertruck, make it dragon, rainbow dragon, custom black and white and rainbow, and red and green and black and white and rainbow for that custom Cybertruck. I wouldn't mind owning a Cybertruck, but custom made, with a rainbow dragon on it and red and white and black and green, yeah, something colorful. Because I would charge it with electricity, which does not pollute from the electricity in Quebec here for the electricity in Quebec. So it would not pollute. It would be constituent, of course, to the environmentally friendly. And we must think of maybe trying to adopt a mass public-private partnership plan to convert our trucks into electric trucks. If we are we Let's say if we are to mobilize in theory, this is a mathematical theoretical question with all the corporations and institutions, I believe that we can together, Canadians and my brothers and sisters in USA. Let's say we build the engines, could we just replace, technically feasible to replace the engines of a vast portion of our trucks with electric engines? So if we look at the electric engines, motors that are powered by Tesla, because basically we would only have to modify to take out the gas engines and the gas structure and replace it with electric. How feasible would that be? Without It would be just to keep like the metal from the metal and the structure of the truck, to just change it and convert it into electric. Would that be a plan? That could be, I guess, if we are to get together with the military industrial complex and the ideas and theories of the protocols, and of course all the public private partnership as a mass public private partnership, we could be able to do that, and we should start to do that, as we can get lots of solar from the sun and from the water. We can get the water from Hydro Quebec. We can build more dams, right? And on the island of the Hawk, we can build mass electric, hydroelectric power generators for this whole security service and defense. The thousands of trucks, they can come and recharge here, and they can go coast to coast, ocean to ocean, across the empire, across the 63. In the other center would be California. We build the fourth center, California, Montreal, British Columbia, Florida, the axis, the total integrated transport for total food security, total security service and defense for food security for all the transportation. Once it enters the 63 Imperial Complex, all the trucks could be electric. We could do it. We could do it. So that this is gonna be the introduction. I guess I waited until the end to introduce the idea, the theory, but I'm sure that we could. Sure that we could, if we mobilize together public-private partnership, the Dragon Army initiatives, the Teslas, and we can build all the trucks and make a mass public-private partnership for the individual and the collective, and rebalance the public and the private partnership, the PPP, public-private partnership for the rehabilitation of the streets, of the infrastructures as part of the dream, the CIT, citizen integration theory, the DRT, and we got to salute the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers on the road, the warehouse workers, the train conductors. We got to get the North American Collective Workers Party as a universal revolutionary centrist party, and for the individual and for the self and for the collective, for the individual and for the self and for the collective, for the individual and for the self and for the collective. and for the rehabilitation of my brothers and sisters, XYZ situations, financial situations, homelessness, and those who take their second, third chances and you turn your life around for having lost your freedom and liberty and freedom. I always got to salute. I always got to salute. Because I certainly had my second chances. I didn't die of COVID. I didn't die in that moldy place. I didn't die in that vicious surprise attack. And of course, I didn't die in that vicious surprise attack. But it was safe to do some good saving. And of course, my idea is timely, of course, for the relationship of where we are now, for the protocols of where we are, to be involved in all the dynamics and the correlationship of all the North American collective is pledge your allegiance, legion, support the dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. Part of the dream, of course, is the North American collective. So encourage you all to work out, train, exercise. I'm gonna keep it brief today because I'm gonna start cleaning my room office and temple here, and I'm a bit moody. I guess I should eat something. Maybe eat that banana. I'll feel better, and I can dance with bananas if for $1 million. For I don't have OnlyFans, but I don't have OnlyFans, nor did I ever go on OnlyFans, but I can do for $1 million to give my anonymous friend half a banana dance. I guess I'm gonna swing those. Get that priestess Hannah, priestess Hannah, priestess Hannah. Keep my name out of the mouth if it's not for blessing, and got some kisses and consent. Pledge your allegiance, legions 18 plus. Friends with services always welcome. Support the dream and carpe diem and every day. Adrian Hannah Dragon, the dancing goddess, Dragon Kingdom.